Hello, I'm Dr. Margaret Cochran, and this is Wisdom, Love, and Magic. Today's topic is empathy. It was Wednesday, a school night. I used to be a teacher, and that sense of time never really leaves you, I think. And usually on a school night, well, on most nights where I lived at the time, there wasn't much going on. But this night was an exception. I had a date. I just started my career as a psychotherapist and was working in a small, rural, Midwestern town in a mental health clinic attached to a county hospital. On this particular day, my shift was scheduled to end at 5 p.m. It was 4:59. Yes, I was watching the clock that closely, and I was just getting ready to walk out the door. My hand was on the knob, and the phone rang. My heart sank because I knew who was on the other end of the line before I picked it up. I was on call for the emergency room, and sure enough, it was the ER doc who began to describe the case of a 60-year-old boy with a broken arm. Physical exams showed bruises on his torso, and x-rays revealed the presence of lots of other healed and healing fractures. It was clearly an abuse situation, and per state law, Child Protective Services and the police had been called. But they hadn't yet arrived. So the ER doctor wanted me to come over and see what I could do for this young man while they waited for the authorities to get there. When I got to the hospital, I was directed to a conference room where I found a little boy quietly crying with his head down on the table, resting on his one good arm. I introduced myself and told him that I would sit with him for a while, and I slowly and gently began a conversation. How old are you? What grade are you in? And we'd just gotten to do you have any brothers and sisters when he lifted his little head and said, "Please, don't make my daddy go to jail. He didn't mean it. I made him mad. I should have just picked up my stuff when he told me." I explained to him that he didn't make his daddy mad. I told him that feelings are choices, and his daddy made the wrong ones when he hurt him. It's okay to be mad, but it's not okay to hurt others. And then I explained that his daddy needed a timeout, and for adults, sometimes that's jail. Jail is a place where grown-ups can think about what they've done wrong, and while they're thinking, it gives judges time to come up with ways to help them do better. He got it immediately. Kids are really smart. He felt a little better after that, and we began to pass the time by drawing. He drew things that had meanings for him, like family and superheroes and dinosaurs, the important stuff. And then, well, sometimes things go wrong and systems fail, and this time the system failed in a big way. Because suddenly, that boy's huge, well-muscled, and very angry father came bursting into the room and said, "I'm taking my kid home now." Both the little boy and I jumped up from our seats, and I reflexively pushed him behind me. He began to scream, "No, Daddy, don't, don't." He was terrified. I was terrified. I froze. You know how time can slow down and you feel like everything's moving through molasses, even though your mind's racing? This was one of those times. I had no weapons, no legal authority to speak of, and as you can see, I'm hardly physically intimidating. I was stunned. What was I supposed to do? I realized in that moment that nothing in my life, my experience, or my education had prepared me for a situation like this. But by some miracle, my heart and brain clicked into gear, and I managed to get to a state of empathy. I looked up into this huge man's eyes, and I saw sadness, desperation, and shame. And somehow, and to this day, I still am amazed that I managed it. I gathered enough courage to say, "No, not today. I don't know who's hurt you, but I know you've been hurt, and I'm sorry from the bottom of my heart for that. But it stops now, because your hurting is hurting others, especially those you love. Enough. No more." Silence. You could hear a pin drop. And then the most amazing thing happened. That huge man collapsed right in front of me like a giant tree that's been felled and slowly crashes to the forest floor. He went on to his knees, he put his head on my chest, put his arms around me, and started to sob. And from behind me, his son put his head on my back, put his arms around me, and started to sob as well. And by having their arms around me, they had their arms around each other. It was at that moment, of course, that the police finally arrived, guns drawn, expecting the worst. And I do not have words to describe the look on their faces as they saw what they saw when they entered that room. I leaned down and whispered into the man's ear that the police were there and it was time to go. I promised I would do all I could for him and his family, and he needed to tell his son goodbye and that he loved him. And he did. I fulfilled my promise and testified at the man's hearing. I told the judge what had happened and that I believed that there was good in him. I told him that I thought he needed more help than punishment, and the judge agreed and ordered him to perform community service, take anger management and parenting classes, and instead of more jail time, he gave him probation. The boy's father did everything the court ordered, as I expected he would, but then he did something quite extraordinary. He went back to school. He got his GED, and then an undergraduate degree, and then a master's degree, and today he counsels angry, violent men. Empathy.